Hey, welcome back. This is Matt Grohl, Vista Homes. Glad to have you join us. Today we're going to talk about the exciting topic of drywall. So drywall is one of those things that's necessary to create flat, smooth surfaces in your home. So far you've seen the framing go up, insulation, and it definitely looks like a house under construction, right? So now we want to create those nice, smooth walls that can be painted and look like a finished product. So what they do is they apply up boards of drywall. Drywall is a gypsum material. So it's like a chalky material that can provide some strength and durability to a wall, but then not be really heavy, not be very costly. So in 99% of your home, we're going to use a half-inch drywall. Is what they call it. So that's going to go on all the walls. We put the ceiling on first, and then we put the walls on there. So depending on where you're installing the drywall, they will use screws. Sometimes they'll use glue, depending on how they're applying it, where they're applying it. So that's most of the house is a half-inch drywall. They'll hang it off the bottom of the floor, maybe a half-inch or so, just so it's not touching the floor, just prevent any moisture from wicking up into the walls, as well as it making it easier to install. One area is if you have a living space above, like a garage or something like that, that ceiling has to be 5/8 drywall for a fire code. So sometimes you see thicker drywall in some of those areas. So below a garage ceiling, if there's living space above it, as well as like below stairs and so forth. So sometimes you'll see a curved wall that's like really curved. You're like, man, how do they wrap drywall around that? So what they actually do is do multiple layers of 1/4-inch drywall that's scored the back, and that allows it to bend. So sometimes you'll see 1/4-inch drywall, not very often, but sometimes. In your bathroom areas, you can have what we call green board or water resistant drywall. That is not waterproof drywall, that is just water resistant to prevent any kind of mold growth on the drywall. So they'll have that in shower areas and any kind of wet areas that they deem appropriate. Not necessarily a hard enforced code issue, but just a good general practice, and we do that in all our homes. So ways you can finish your garage. So in a garage, you can have a finished drywall where it looks just like the inside of a home, where we paint the walls and it's nice and clean and fresh. Or you can have basic code requires what we call fire taping. That's where we have to create a seal, an envelope inside there. So all the drywall seams will be mudded and taped. And that is as far as we go. So we're not going to finish smoothing it all out. We're not going to texture it. We're simply just going to fire tape the house. That is the most cost-effective way to finish a garage. Typically, it's anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 to finish mudding a garage, so it's paint ready. So definitely something you can choose if you want. Some people like to have a garage that's very nice and clean and painted and finished. Others are not worried about that. So again, really one of those things that you can choose for yourself. So if you ever go inside a home after it's drywalled and mudded and you're like, hey, these guys are done, but wait, they didn't finish the areas in the shower or the bathtub, well, that's because it's going to be covered with something else. So again, back to code, they have to put the tape up to seal it, but they don't have to finish it. So don't worry about that if you see that. So they don't finish mudding behind some of those areas that are going to be covered up with other things. So just so you know that. So the way they mud, for example, they have this 2-inch paper tape that's covered on mud on the bottom side, and they'll put that in the seams and they'll flatten that out, and then they'll come back with multiple coats. The first coat they use is very much a all-purpose coat. It's a very hard coat, so if you sand it, it's really hard to sand, but they want that one to be really tight and strong. And the coats on top of that are what we call lightweight and then topping, which is easier to sand and sculpt, so that way they can get a nice finished product but not have to work so hard. And sometimes sanding that drywall mud, if it's all purpose, you can actually tear the paper off the drywall and make more of a mess. So they do that, and so the different types of muds they use, different stages are different, so there's just not one type of mud. So sanding is always a messy process, so expect to have a very messy house at this phase. There's mud everywhere, there's dust everywhere, but the mud guys that we use are very good to clean up after themselves, scrape the floors, and have it ready for the painters to come in and start working. Well, actually the trim guys to come in and start trimming out the house. So as far as the seating goes, we're seeing what we call knockdown. That's what 99% of the homes do. They have this stomper, they stomp the ceiling, they wait about 5-10 minutes, they come with a trowel and just knock down the tops. So that is a very common texture for the ceiling, and that's really handy because that really takes away any imperfections and reflections of light off the ceiling. There's two main ways we're seeing texture on the wall right now. We're seeing a lot of what we call Santa Fe or Holy Smooth, a million different names for this. That's where it's just very, very faint texture, and they come back and trowel it out. Now, that is the most cost-effective way. You may say, well, what if they're adding texture, so it's adding more cost? Well, it actually lets them do less finish work on the drywall because it doesn't have to be perfect, because they can cover up some of the imperfections with the mud. And that's actually a good thing to have some kind of texture if you have kids, or if you're going to have blemishes on your wall. It makes it a lot easier to patch and match. Whereas some homes will want a perfectly smooth wall, which is very pretty and very, very gorgeous. But man, any imperfection or any kind of repair you have to do, if something were to happen, is very hard to make it so it's not obvious. So that's one of the challenges with a smooth wall. So that's the other option, wholly smooth and smooth. So that kind of wraps up our drywall process. Drywall process will typically take them 3 to 4 days to hang all the drywall, another week and a half to mud it, because they have to let it mud and dry. So weather can be an issue here. So if it's summertime, it can get really hot and dry really fast. Wintertime can be hard because if it's not warm enough, it won't dry fast enough. So I have to put heaters in there, which causes moisture. So it's definitely not a non-complex process. You may think it is, but it definitely has to be done in the right conditions for the right optimal result. So anyways, that's drywall. Again, a million ways we could add to this, and a lot more options you could probably do, but these are the most basic things to consider when drywalling your home. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.